right, let's get from me to a guy who's $126 million richer than me in Jrue Holiday, and Scott Kushner joining us, New Orleans advocate. Scott, they were kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Not that they don't love Jrue, but really no choice here but to pay him the $126 million to keep him. How close was this really from the start? Was there ever a situation where it looked tenuous between the two sides?
I think at the start of this whole process, as the season was ending and they were going to miss the playoffs again and all those kinds of things, and the point guard market looked like it was going to be a lot hotter than it was, I think there was some concern that he might fold, might go somewhere else. As the point guard market cooled, the Pelicans' interest never really wavered at all, and I think that really started to lead to it. And certainly when they went ahead and scheduled that meeting at 11 o'clock, to go ahead and, that very first minute that they could talk, that they started that conversation, I think it made it pretty obvious that Holiday was going to be their guy.
The question is, how do all these pieces come in? Now, clearly, they'll be in a better spot, Scott, to now have the Twin Towers, in quotes, if you will, kind of together from the start. But at that 2 and the 3 spot, clearly there was a big void there. They'd love, I'm sure, to have a shooter at the 2 spot. Do they have money to get anybody to fill either of those 2 roles?
Not really. They, unless they can clear out Omer Asik, which seems almost untradeable, maybe Quincy Pondexter they can dump. They'd probably have to package an asset, and the only real asset that's left is either E'Twaun Moore, who's somewhat of an asset, or their first-round pick for next year. So they might try to make a move like that, and if not, I think you're going to see them try to use that mid-level exception, biannual exception, and try to fill in some gaps that way. But I really do think they're going to play Jrue Holiday off the ball next year. So I would be expecting them to sign a point guard more so than I would be to see them sign just a pure 2.
Very interesting. I love that, Scott. Keep the cell phone handy. Appreciate a couple minutes here.
Absolutely, no problem.
All right, there's Scott Kushner. So I love this because we had Coach Gentry in here, and I told him we got to get you a shooter. No offense to E'Twaun Moore, but we got to get somebody in there. If they move Holiday and look for a point guard, okay, but can they afford any of this?
Well, Scott was pretty good. He got it right. Mid-level exception, biennial exception. Those are the tools that they have to spend. So they never went under the salary cap. Had they lost Jrue, they have about $18 million to spend, somewhere in that range. Believe me, they were in a rock and a hard place. They found sort of a nice number. They could have given Jrue, he could have fought for $170-something million, right? So they found like a number that worked for both, right in the middle, 126, right? So now they have that $8.5 million mid-level exception, which is more than it used to be. It used to be in the 5 range. You got to get a shooter, right? I don't know what Bojanovic, I don't know what he's going to get. That might not be enough. There are guys out there, but you got to get some shooting on this team when you've got those bigs. Biennial exception, it's like $3 million in that range. It's not a lot, but you have a little bit to work with. As far as cutting players and shedding, if you shed salary, it's more about getting out of the tax and preventing that. But I don't think tax is really going to be a problem for the Pelicans.
Well, interesting. We'll see what they can do, what they can spend, and whether or not the boogie thing will work. Let's talk about some small deals reported to be done. MCW to the Hornets, which means despite the fact that Malik Monk was talking about on our summer league to the guys today playing a lot of the point, now it looks like he'll be the 2. MCW, the backup point guard. Amir Johnson, we talked about. Langston Galloway, love Langston Galloway, $21 million for 3 years. Quite an interesting thing. And then Jose Calderon, you guys surprised on the quick here? You surprised that's who the Cavaliers picked to be the backup point guard?
I am. I think he's a good point guard, but I think they needed more of a defensive point guard in that position.
Yeah, defensive point guard, another shot maker on the floor once again. When LeBron and Kyrie going one-on-one, you got to have someone at weak side of the floor to knock down shots.